okay. And I yelled again because it startled me because I wasn't quite fully awake.
Right.
You should write those down. I've been writing all my crazy dreams.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you know, what was funny about the polar bear thing is like, you know, I kind of woke up and was like, okay, that's not real. But then, you know, when you kind of come out of REM and then you go back in. And so the dream sort of continued. And so in the dream, I'm telling people like, I had a dream that I had a polar bear as a pet.
Oh, wow.
But that was a dream because
Inception.
I live alone and I didn't talk to anybody about this. You know, when I finally woke up later, I was like,
exhausted.
What that means.
Wait, so the second time you went under, the polar bear was no longer there, but instead you were talking about the polar bear.
I was talking about my dream that I had because I knew it wasn't real. And everyone was like, okay, whatever. No one cares about your dream. But that itself was a dream.
Rude dream roommates.
If I remember a dream a month, it's a lot, and my dreams suck compared to your guys' dreams.
So I'll show you how crazy
weird,
mine
man.
is. I already shared my Godzilla dream on a previous episode of Good Day Internet. But this one happened 2 months ago, and I dreamt I was on. I know this because I write these down when I wake up.
Yeah,
I was on an 18th century sailing ship flying through like a dreamscape of space, but like surrounding the edges of space were like these coral like formations, and outside were coming like these giant lobsters. And so I had to kind of commandeer these elephants to help me fight them.
What are you eating before bed?
Probably.
Well, you know, but the thing is, like, you make a good point. If you write down the stuff when you first wake up, there's so many details that you just won't remember even within the hour.
Oh no, you totally forget. And so I write.
Yeah.
This is literally just a vomit, and you know, and it's a weird, and it's weird because the ship feels like a restaurant, you know, because my dad runs a restaurant, like a seafood restaurant for like a buffet restaurant. And the sailors on board look like pirates, but they also look like office workers. So they're pirates with ties, kind of, you know.
It's starting to sound like the opening of a Monty Python movie.
And then, anyways, there's just
like,
a
this
lot
is
of
a
giant
sci-fi
lobsters
movie.
I had to keep off the ship with elephants. I don't know.
Well, it's dreams are so, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's an anxiety dream, you know, like whether it was weird or not, you kind of get where it was coming from, or, you know, some sort of like, or you're worried about finances or whatever, you can kind of make sense of it. But then there are dreams where, you know, for example, my dad died 14 years ago, and it's like, he's in my dreams a lot, but he wasn't for 10 years.
Oh, interesting.
You know, and like in the dream, we don't talk about like he's just sort of there and things are normal, but like there's always something a little off about it. But it's like, why did it take so long for my brain to start like manifesting this stuff?
Do you ever dream about stuff that literally just comes out of nowhere? Like you wake up, it's like,
like having a polar bear as a pet.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's the norm for people is to dream about stuff that comes out of nowhere.
Because I had another dream about Danny McBride, the actor, but he had supernatural powers, and he was just going like psychotic on everyone. And I had to escape on an end loader. Like I apprehended one from a work site, and I was just trying to drive and get away, but it was too slow.
Your dreams are very like
Roger has the best dreams. Yeah. I want to have Roger's dreams.
Damn. Yeah.
I'm gonna
subscribe to Roger's dreams. I want them to be available as a service.
I'm gonna take the advice of one of the chatters in the previous episode and write this down into a book of like.
No.
Illustrated by Len Peralta.
No, I tweet all my dreams out.
Do you?
Yeah, right after they happen, I wake up and I try to tweet them out.
What is your son wearing on his head?
That's actually a pretty good idea for a Twitter account. You know, like
read my Twitter account.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't do it all the time.
I mean, we're about to start the show, but you should know that your son has a tricorner hat on.
Yeah, I know. I see him behind me. Okay.
All right, you guys ready?
Pretty cute. Yep.
Here we go.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, June 15th, 2018 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And from Cleveland, I'm Len Peralta.
Glenn has been fighting with AT&T. That's why he sounds a little lower than usual. But you know who's here to cheer him up? Patrick Norton.
I'm in Alameda, where we have amazing internet that costs practically nothing until the startup fails, and I'll have to go back to Comcast with my tail between my legs.
And now, to balance all of that out, our producer, Roger Chang.
I have Spectrum.
But it's working today.
It was, and it stopped working for about 30 minutes, and I was wondering if I had to drive up to Tom's place.
I also have Spectrum, but Roger's Spectrum is pretty.
I have the same region of Spectrum that Sarah has, and mine's fine. Roger's, for some reason, is not.
Someone's sitting on a line somewhere.
All right. We are going to talk with Patrick a little bit about parts, used parts, and graphics card prices coming down, but let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Well, Len, you either will love or hate this story. I'm not sure yet. AT&T has closed the deal and has merged with Time Warner. The deal was signed in October of 2016, but faced opposition from the U.S. Department of Justice and it's been hung up for some time. The merged company now owns a major ISP, wireless carrier, DirecTV, HBO, Turner Networks, and Warner Brothers Film Studio.
Ride-hailing company Didi Chuxing announced it will expand its service to Melbourne starting June 25th after a month-long test in Geelong. Go Cats! The expansion to Australia puts Didi in direct competition with Uber and Ola, which, by the way, Didi is an investor in. Both of those. Also, Taxify operates in Australia, which Didi is also an investor in. Anyway, Didi previously expanded into Taiwan, Mexico, and Brazil this year, so this continues their international expansion.
What kind of cats are the mascot cats?
They're AFL of cats.
No, I meant like what kind of breed of cat?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, go Cats. Pebble owner Fitbit will end support for Pebble watches on June 30th. The group of developers have created an independent project called Rebel.io. That's where you find out more information to continue support for existing Pebble watches. Pebble users are encouraged to create a Rebel account before June 30th in order to keep their settings. However, the new service may not be ready in time for the shutdown.
The 3GPP group that oversees international cellular standards has approved the standalone 5G new radio spec. That's the last step to complete the 5G standard. 3GPP approved the non-standalone version back in December. That's the one used to build 5G on top of existing LTE networks. We told you about that back in December. This new standalone spec is for completely new implementations. Now, working groups are still going to address some known gaps in the standard. There are definitely issues that will come up as 5G is implemented that will require some tweaks, but the 3GPP considers the 5G system now officially complete. So there you go. The standard has been writ. All right, let's talk a little bit more about screens.
Let's do it. Let's talk about new iPhone screens and let's speculate on them, perhaps. Sources tell the Wall Street Journal that Apple is ordering more supply chain parts for an upcoming LCD screen phone than for 2 OLED models. Now, Apple currently has 1 OLED phone and 2 LCD models, but is expected to announce 2 OLED models and an LCD model later this year, this autumn, to be specific.
So, Patrick, I'm kind of not surprised by this. The idea that it's like, oh, well, they expect the cheaper phone to sell bigger, but I guess that's not usually been the case with Apple.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's one of the things where you have superior technology dripping its way down, I assume, to the less expensive versions of the phone. You know, at this point, I'm so curious to see what the fallout is. You know, is there going to be something like the iPhone 10 this year? Is there an iPhone 11? What's the iPhone 9 going to be? The rumors are still too early. I mean,
the best guesses that I've seen from the people that are usually right are 2 OLED models that are like the iPhone 10, one big, one small, and then a 6-inch kind of in between those two sizes with an LCD screen. And that's the one it seems like the parts suppliers are saying, yeah, they're ordering more parts for that one than for the 2 OLED ones.
That would make sense. I mean, the OLED is a price premium. My understanding is that they've had difficulty securing supply of OLED screens. So I think they're looking for a second vendor on that, might be. Yeah. You know, that was one of the issues that was sort of floating up through the rumor mills. You know, I'll be honest with you. I'm particularly interested because I partially want to stay on iOS, but I was playing around with the OnePlus 6 that Shannon had in for review, and the cameras are so much better than on my phone right now. I'm actually thinking about, you know, giving up on my headphone jack to have a better camera. So, and the OLED screens look amazing on the phones.
What iPhone are you using now?
I'm using a fantastic iPhone Model 6, which I waited, as long as I could to buy, and then bought a 128 gigabyte version, and now it's to the point where the low light, this current generation of phones right now, the low light photography is so much better than this phone. I'm actually starting to have urges.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I said how much better the camera was, my first reaction is like, really, iPhone not good, but the 6 didn't have the telephoto lens, right? You had to go to the 6 Plus for that. So yeah.
And the low light performance, they did a big jump on the 7. I mean, I approach phones at this point kind of like I approach cars. I want to buy the least expensive. Like I buy Subarus. I want something that's going to last until I can't stand it anymore and will take the rest of my life to fall apart. Phones, fortunately, take a lot less time to fall apart, and unlike Subarus, they tend not to. They just don't age well. Phones don't age well.
DeepMind published research in Science describing a machine learning system that can take a collection of pictures of a scene and then predict what the scene would look like from a viewpoint not represented in the images. The system creates a representation of space based on 2 images. Then a separate generative query network, or GQN, uses one image to determine the identity to identify position and color of objects, as well as shadows and other things related to perspective. Took a couple months to train the GQN, and it's unclear if this approach can be adapted beyond the narrow problem of predicting what a scene looks like from a different angle. But it's quite an advance to be able to fill in the gaps like that.
I look at this and I'm torn between being like, that line, I reread that last line like 6 times because I was giggling. Can be adapted beyond the narrow problem of predicting what a scene is. But if you think about what this involves, if I am guiding a vehicle, what can I determine? What can I assume? What is going to change based on what I can actually physically see? Or if I'm trying to guide, say, autonomous vehicles that are going to help put out a fire or something, there's this. It's a really simple problem, except it's incredibly complex, and the ideas it can be sort of smeared across in terms of improving how things function is amazing. But it's like, can we adapt this thing? I don't know.
Can we get beyond one angle? Like one angle is a step, but we're going to need a lot more of that for this to work in things like self-driving cars.
And I know we're not talking about video, but just because I think of like home studio stuff. Like if I had 2 angles and I could somehow figure out what a third one would be without actually having to buy an extra camera, pretty cool. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Oprah, right? Who wants to talk about Oprah?
I do.
Oprah Winfrey, my friend and yours, will create original programs that embrace her incomparable ability to connect with audiences around the world. Those are Apple's words. The company didn't say if Winfrey would appear on any of the shows, but that's sort of probably a given. Financial details also not disclosed in this deal. Apple also said the deal would not affect OWN, which is Winfrey's own TV network, launched in 2011, now owned by Discovery. She's also the CEO and chairman of OWN. She also has a contract there through 2025, so not exclusive with Apple. Apple also made deals for more than a dozen shows with a lot of celebrities: Reese Witherspoon, Steven Spielberg, Octavia Spencer, Kevin Durant, to name a few. You also might recall the Obamas have a deal with Netflix.
And Jennifer Aniston
as well. Yeah. In fact, I think Reese and Jennifer are working on a show together. I don't know. That sounds great. Maybe I just
there's the list goes on and on and on is the point. And everybody wonders what they're going to do with this. Like Oprah doesn't appear on her YouTube channel. Eileen, my wife, worked with OWN on their YouTube channel, and she never appeared on that. She doesn't appear on OWN beyond her own show that often. So it's not a given that she would actually have a show here. But Oprah also putting her stamp on a show, it means it's going to have much more success than it would otherwise. And everybody's wondering, okay, what's Apple going to do with all of this high quality talent that they've signed on? Are they going to make it available free on Apple devices? No. Are they going to do a subscription service, which one insider said that's what Apple told them? Is it going to be a combination where you get it free on the Apple TV and the iPhone, but if not, you can pay for it? It's all up in the air now.
It's all part of they're finally starting to battle back, I think, against Netflix. I mean, Netflix, I want to say spent $6.3 billion on content.
I think they're up to projecting $8 billion this year. Yeah.
Yeah. And Apple is so far behind that. I don't know. It feels like yet another front where Apple is playing catch up, on the iTunes
Unless
side
they're
of
playing
things.
a different game. That's the thing, right? Like
Right.
They don't need to create a Netflix with a huge back catalog. They can use it as a way to sell their hardware, which Netflix doesn't have that option.
Okay. I don't know. I'm watching all of the mergers and acquisitions at the super high level. For example, we were talking about an AT&T merger where we now have some of everything. It just feels like the Google, Apple, Amazon battles are getting more vicious where content is concerned.
Well, and content is no longer a business. It's a thing that you add into another business and use to drive those other businesses.
To sell, that first business. Well, and we still, we don't report every single deal that these companies are making with celebrities or media professionals. But Oprah Winfrey is a big one. Arguably one of the biggest ones that you could possibly get. But we're still at that point of like, wow, kind of big deal. But what will it be? No one knows.
Yeah, I mean,
Apple's making deals, but we don't know what that looks like yet.
Yeah, but I mean, like, to put this into context, you're talking about Netflix, who obviously desperately needs content to keep people to pay their subscriptions, right? They're spending more than anybody else, like $6.3 billion. Amazon scaled up to something like $4 billion, and Apple's, they're $1 billion, $2 billion this year. I think it was like $1 billion.
Yeah, but you're comparing apples with Amazons and Netflixes, to coin a phrase. Get it? Because oranges.
I'm with you.
I got it.
It just wasn't very good. I get it. I understand. No, but I guess I'm just repeating myself at this point. But my point is like, but they don't need to do it exactly the same way. So
no, but it's still, I guess
HBO doesn't have as big of a catalog, and they're doing well as well.
Sure, but they also have a huge existing revenue stream. It's going to take a very, very long time.
So does Apple. It's called the iPhone.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of this from the cord cutter perspective and not from the giant corporate maneuvering perspective. For me, the cord cutter perspective at this point is like, crap, is there another service I'm going to have to buy to get this one amazing show?
That'll be interesting. Scientists at Delft University of Technology published details in Nature of the first system for reliably triggering a quantum pairing effect called entanglement. It's a major step toward creating secure quantum networks. The effect worked across 2 nodes about 2 meters apart. The next step will be to add a third node for true networking. And the scientists hope to connect 4 Dutch cities, at least like one setup in each city, through entanglement in 2020 to create the first demonstration of a quantum internet. Not much to discuss here other than like, wow, good job.
Also, entanglement is a funny term for something really cool, but okay, that's what it's called.
I really see. I guess I'm just. I've heard about it for so long.
Entanglement to me is like a mess of cables.
Entanglement to me is when 2 particles that are separated by distance operate in the same way because they're pairs.
And I'm thinking about Jim and Jody in that rom-com that came out last week.
I'm a nerd.
Hey, at least it's not entrapment. And a gadget source that Microsoft's next HoloLens will use Qualcomm's XR1 platform meant for VR and AR. And gadget sources agree with Thurrott.com that the new HoloLens will arrive in January. Qualcomm says the XR1 delivers directional audio, 3D overlays, and 4K video at 60 frames per second. Qualcomm also counted Vive, Vuzix, and Meta as partners when the XR1 was announced back in May.
So yeah, a lot of people just assumed it'd be the Snapdragon 845. But I guess if we'd really thought about it, it would make sense that Qualcomm coming out with an AR platform ought to be used. And it sounds like it will be. I'm curious if this is going to be available for the public. And we kind of talked about this when Brad Sams had his report that his sources were saying it's coming out in Q1. Are we going to get a developer's kit again? Or is this going to be the thing where we start selling it to the public? What's your best guess?
I think they have to start selling it to the public, but I think the public's going to be more on the business side. I'm still recoiling in horror from the experience I expected based on all of the videos they produced and I'm looking through a brick in a wall HoloLens experience that the actual headset delivered. So I'm very, very, I think if they open it up and give you a better perspective, I'm also really kind of curious to see where the whole, at this point,
You've tried it, right?
I tried it, yeah, and it was cool. I mean, on one hand, it was really amazing, but all of their videos that they had produced for it had basically they'd use stereo cameras, and you had this full, this massive field of view. And then when you actually put the HoloLens on, literally there was like a block this big that you were looking through, and it was very, it was cool to look through that block, but it was a huge letdown compared to what.
See, I had the opposite reaction, simply because I expected that limited view to be worse than it was. So I guess it's all about expectations. But either way, it is a limited view. You're not getting around that.
Go ahead.
That's all right. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines at dailytechheadlines.com. We bring you good news. GPU prices have become affordable again. Hooray.
Is that just because people don't care about Bitcoin mining anymore?
Well, it's not that they don't care.
I know, I'm half kidding, but
price has come down, which is, kind of tantamount to the same thing, I guess. Like, if the price is down, why do I care?
Related, yeah.
Yeah. And also that there are more specialty cards for if you're serious about it in the areas where you can still make money. You get these specialty cards. You don't go and get an off the rack card anymore. Right. So yeah. Also, with graphics cards coming down, it may be that other parts start to spike for whatever reason, right? You may go through this again with a different part, especially the U.S. announcing tariffs on electronics components coming in from China today. So let's talk a little bit, first of all, about the graphics cards, Patrick, but also about where to find cheaper parts, particularly used parts. I think used parts give a lot of people the willies because they're like, is that reliable? Should I, is my machine going to burn up if I buy this?
Oh man. Working backwards. Yeah. Okay. So buying used GPUs, we did a thing on TekThing about this where I talked to two friends of mine, one of whom reviews graphics cards for a living, and the other one who reviews other things for a living, but has 19 systems with 76 GPUs in a mining operation. Yeah. Most of those were acquired before the prices went berserk. So if you haven't been following GPU prices, the stuff was at MSRP, say around, I don't know, April, May 2017. And then they were like $50, $60, a $350 card or a $400 card was selling for like I want to say a $50 premium. And then as Bitcoin prices scaled and people got into Ethereum mining and scarcity got particularly brutal because they simply couldn't produce enough cards to fulfill demand, by Christmas time, things had gone completely berserk, and you were looking at paying, let's say $800 or $1,100 for a $550 MSRP GPU. The GTX 1070, I thought I got ripped off on because it cost me $450 in June of 2017, was selling for $850 or $900 around December, January at the tail end of 2017 or 2018. It was nuts. It has impacted PC sales because it was just too expensive for most people, but an $1,100 PC became a $2,200 PC, mostly because of the GPU price increases, which mostly impacts gamers and people who are doing high-powered machines for video rendering and Photoshop and stuff like that. But the other thing that happened around the same period in time is RAM prices have gone kind of berserk. So 2016 RAM, because there was an excess of RAM production and not a huge demand, prices, you were looking at a 16 gigabyte memory kit, 2 8 gigabyte sticks. Corsair is a particularly good example. I like their Corsair Vengeance RAM. It dropped down to $60 for 16 gigabytes of RAM. That is the lowest it has ever been. People forget that a year before it was up around $170, and but literally you were looking at $60 to $120 for RAM for the better part of a year, almost 2 years between 2015 and 2017. And as cell phone manufacturers, Android cell phone manufacturers, started to think of additional RAM as being a premium and a differentiator, especially in China, they started hurling RAM into phones. And between that and a couple other things scaling up, memory prices started to go berserk. So right now, the memory you could buy in the summer of 2016 for $60 is now selling for $130, which isn't bad. It's still a lot. It's still 40 or $60 down from where memory prices peaked in, I want to say, 2014. Memory manufacturers think this is great. But we're also looking at possibly Samsung bringing online a couple of big fabs this year that should help A, fulfill the demand for RAM, and B, bring the price back down. But it's amazing to look at how much sort of the system prices have fluctuated, because RAM's effectively doubled in price over the last 18 months. And GPUs went from sort of MSRP or a little bit under MSRP to at least 2.5 times MSRP, and now are back maybe not at MSRP, but certainly close enough that it's not emotionally traumatizing to buy a new system.
So graphics cards getting cheaper, RAM prices getting more expensive. What do we do?
If for me, because I like to run 32,000 things simultaneously on my system, I try to put 16 gigabytes in every system I own. And that's just, excuse me, I don't expect that price to change too much. The nice thing is that GPUs have got more affordable, so that's not too bad. And the other thing that's come down in price that kind of offsets the cost of memory is SSDs have come down in price considerably. So what would have been a $340 1 terabyte SSD is now selling for about $250. So I think you choose carefully. But if you're buying a system right now, GPUs are affordable again. CPUs, especially AMD Ryzen's, like there's a special right now on Amazon that's a AMD Ryzen 1700 is selling for $200, which is a huge drop from what it originally sold for. The 1800X I use in my primary video editing and gaming system, I want to say, I think I paid $500 for it. It sells for around $300 now. So I think if you shop carefully, you can build a system. You can actually afford to build a system now, I guess would be the simple way of putting it.
And real quickly, is it safe to buy used parts? What should you know?
So I mentioned my two friends, one of whom reviews GPUs, and the other one who has the largest collection of GPUs of anyone I personally know. And what was interesting is the guy that's got 76 GPUs, he's had 4 fail in about a year of 24/7, 365 operations. And his observation was that the GPUs don't fail. You can actually wear out a GPU, which gets into a really geeky conversation that'll put everybody to sleep, starting with me. But it takes a staggering number of operations to do that. The problem with most GPUs is the quality of the components around it, primarily the capacitors. So what he did is he looked to find out which models of GPUs had the longest warranty. And what he found is when he looked at them side by side, the GPUs with the longest warranty had considerably better components. And he feels that you should be comfortable in buying used cards. Maybe not off of eBay, but certainly from friends or relatives or friends of friends. And that's where it gets kind of interesting, because a lot of people expect at some point there'd be kind of a glut of used cars to show up on the market. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. Maybe I need to spend more time on eBay searching for used GPUs. If you've got a friend who's selling it, it's probably not too bad an idea. If you're getting it off of eBay, I would expect it came out of a warehouse somewhere near, a very cheap source of electricity, and has probably been pretty heavily abused. And there's really no way to know how badly that has been abused. In terms of buying used parts, like Tom's old system, and I'm going to buy it, that's fine. Super cheap GPUs off of eBay, I'd get a little uptight about, but I'd be a little uptight about those normally.
Well, thank you, Patrick.
No worries.
Thanks to everybody also who participates in our subreddit. First thing I read every morning, you could submit stories and also vote on other stories that are submitted. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Also, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. Chat with us however you like. All right, moving on to the thing of the day. Chris Christensen, we haven't checked in with him in a while, but he always has great travel tips, and this is a new way to save on hotels.
This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. When you're booking your flight and your hotel online, you may or may not know that you can often save money by booking it as a package. And when you're booking it as a package, you're booking it from the same company and at the same time. I have sometimes saved enough money, for instance, on a hotel when I booked it with the flight that basically the hotel was free. There's more profit in hotels and therefore more flexibility than there are in flights. And so sometimes booking it together can save you money. But the problem is that most people don't want to do that. Or I say most people, Expedia says 46% of US travelers prefer to book their flight and hotel separately. So what they've done is after you go on Expedia and you book a flight, for a short period of time, they will give you hotel options that will give you the kind of savings that you would get if you booked it as a package. They say on average, customers will save 43%, which is significant. So good on you, Expedia, something you might want to try out in the future. I'm Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
Yeah, that is kind of nifty. I guess you have to choose to book through Expedia in that case, but it might be worth looking into.
Why do you think it's almost 50% of people don't like the idea of bundling those things together? Because
I feel locked in. I want to have the flexibility to not have to book at the same time. I might want to book my hotel later because you don't get as much. There's not as much of gaming the system as there is with flight fares.
Right.
And I may have some points I want to cash in, whatever, right? I don't like having to be locked in and making that decision all at once.
I mean, I don't either, but I wonder why. I guess there's sort of a perception that it's a good deal, that restricts you in the end.
I've also seen for a lot of services I've looked at where the bundle was a car rental that was twice what it would be if I was going directly through the car vendor, or hotel deals that were worse than I think I automatically at this point assume that I'm looking at them like, oh, well, one, I'm going to give Expedia a chance again because I haven't used them in forever, and two, I'll look at the bundles. But so many times the bundles, for example, through I want to say Southwest, were just awful, and I was like, no, I'm not going to pay that much for the hotel that I didn't want to buy with my flight.
All right, let's see what's in the mailbag, Sarah.
Let's do it. Albert from Maryland, a.k.a. Mar McCheese, has some thoughts on the whole idea of perhaps Walmart and Microsoft getting together to do an Amazon Go type cashierless store. Albert says, I worked for Walmart for almost 17 years. My wife is coming up on her 20th year in November. There have been rumors on the Walmart subreddit about stores eventually going cashierless in the future. Will they offer the cashiers jobs with the online grocery pickup, also known as OGP, as personal shoppers? Here's why that might make sense. My wife's store started the OGP service last November. Works pretty good. Biggest problem they have, not having enough personal shoppers to pick up all the merch for the customers in a timely manner, which obviously is important. If they could move most of those cashiers to OGP, that would solve the biggest issue. I wouldn't be surprised to see this happen sooner than later because Walmart is scared of Amazon's grocery delivery. Also, over the past few years, they've been making changes much faster than they used to. I would say, Albert, 17 years. He probably knows Walmart pretty intimately.
Yeah, no kidding. And this is the kind of thing that I often am at a loss for an example, but I know from just studying history that what happens is there are jobs that you either don't have enough people for, or can't afford to pay people for, or haven't even invented yet because you just didn't think I would ever have the people for, that when you loosen up, like, oh, you don't have to do that grunt work anymore that the AI can do. Now we can actually have you be a personal shopper and improve our service. That happens very often. This is a great example of it. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much, Albert.
Let's check in with Len Peralta, who has been illustrating the show. Len, what do you have for us?
Yes, I think this has something to do with the fact that I am working with AT&T and Time Warner. The big story of the week, of course, is the merger of Time Warner and AT&T. And this is a visual representation of how I feel about AT&T eating Time Warner. If you're not seeing the video, essentially what it is, it's AT&T is some sort of creature that is swallowing a slug-like thing that looks like Time Warner, and
great nails, great teeth.
Yeah.
I really thought of AT&T in that way, but
it's not the most flattering representation of AT&T.
I was going to say Gollum.
Right.
It looks like a
300-pound Gollum swallowing the world's ugliest slug.
Weird worm.
Yeah, exactly.
And remember, folks at Spectrum, we know you're not that Time Warner. Different one.
Exactly. Hey, I also want to remind people that if they're looking for a quick commission, they can go to my online store. I just introduced this thing called Quick Bits, which are very affordable, quick art that comes with a time-lapse video free. So makes for a great gift if you're looking for a last-minute thing for Father's Day or anything like
excellent. That. Go commission Len at lenperaltastore.com. Please.
Thanks, Len. And also thanks to Patrick Norton. Always brings the good knowledge. Patrick, what have you been working on lately, and where could people keep up with what you're doing?
Oh, still doing TekThing TekThing with Shannon Morris, and Robert Heron and I just recorded another episode of AVXL this morning where we're talking about 2018 TVs and what's going on with Dolby Vision versus HDR10 and perhaps headphones.
Excellent. Well, folks, we have 3 more patrons right now than we did last month, but we'd like that to be even more. Thank you to everybody who supports us at patreon.com/DTNS. Keeps the lights on, keeps burgers in our mouths, make sure that we're here and alive and ready to help you understand the tech world every day. There are all kinds of perks for joining us. Check them out at patreon.com/DTNS. And please peruse our fine selection of DTNS gear at dailytechnewsshow.com/store.
Why'd you have to mention burgers?
I did because
I need one.
I was thinking of you when I said that. Too.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Please keep the burgers in all of our mouths. It's wonderful. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. If you have suggestions for burgers or any other ideas or questions, comments, all that good stuff. We all are also live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back on Monday with Justin Robert Young. And if you're not a patron, there's a DTNS Labs coming about loot boxes this weekend. We'll talk to you Monday.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
I made that sound like if you're a patron, you don't get it. Patrons already have the DTNS Labs.
I just thought you said loot boxes like medieval stringed instrument. Then I'm like, oh, wait, loot boxes.
Oh, my God. I have to tell Scott Johnson that right away so he can make a cartoon.
Different than, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. But you said loot boxes.
This is not what I was anticipating.
What was that old, really old video game? Was it called Rosella? Do you guys remember that game? I mean, this is like 1986.
What happened?
Well, you were a princess.
Oh, you're talking about King's Quest IV, Perils
of Rosella.
Yeah.
I have that game.
And the reason is because you come across like a little pan-like creature playing the lute.
Yes, and you have to fool
And
him.
so when someone said lute, old school lute, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I never won it or anything. I just eventually got tired of it and stopped playing.
You're not supposed to. You're supposed to wait for him. And you're supposed to give him something that distracts him, and he leaves the flute, and you're supposed to take it.
Yeah, something like that.
It's the first game, or the first computer game.
It was definitely it was the first game where I can remember being like, oh, cool, it's like a little land, and I'm like crossing the bridge.
First computer game that featured a day and night cycle.
Oh, good trivia.
Like you actually had to wait at night for certain things to happen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I, of course, had no patience and was like, Mom, I don't want to play this anymore.
Go back to Oregon Trail. I have dysentery.
Yeah.
There's an Oregon Trail card
game I can die in. Great.
My 6-year-old Tristan loves the Oregon Trail card game.
Really?
Yeah.
How much do you find yourself chuckling at that from time to time?
More than I can adequately express. That and the whole he'll say something and I'll be like, and you are eaten by a grue, and he'll just give me this look, and I'm like, I can't wait to dump that game on you.
Zork, the board game.
I wouldn't. I wonder if that's not open. Not open source. I mean, uncopyrighted. You can't do that. I still have a Zork mid somewhere in my bag or box. That was the golden age of feelies, and feelies were basically when they used to sell computer games to kind of add value to it. They would throw in things like objects from the game world to kind of lend an authenticity to it, especially for Infocom because all their games are text adventures. So depending on what you got, like if you had Wishmaster, not Wish.
The ones you got with Deadline were really cool. They were like newspapers and clues.
Yeah. Well, and the mask that came out with.
What are we calling this episode?
Dreams is can't do graphics card pricing, or phones don't age well, or entangled entanglements.
Graphics card pricing is
it's to the point.
Graphing graphics card pricing.
Oh, yes. That's good.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. I didn't quite catch that.
I'm trying to do the Batman where you get multiple titles for the next episode.
So I have a question for anybody here who does any work in Premiere.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so I have a Premiere project that was given to me plus a bunch of media. However, between the time that I gave this person some video files, which were AVI, and when he gave them back to me, they are now MP4. So Premiere is like, can't find the files, even though they're on my computer. What would be the recommended conversion route?
You can point to it. You can force it to look. It won't take it that way.
Premiere is like, won't look at AVI. Not mine anyway, not these.
Or MP4, you mean?
MP4 it would. My original files are in AVI because it got converted after I sent them out.
No, but like I think you should be able to, like when it looks for the assets, you can blank it out and force it.
Really?
I wonder if you can relink them. Because I used to do that. I had to do it for a guy in Berkeley.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'll poke around a little bit more. I'm just like way better in Final Cut, and this is just Premiere is,
Premiere's kind of wonky if you're used to Final Cut, but
yeah, I know that
it's a lot better.
Yeah, well, that's what everybody says. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get used to it. But
oh man,
I can't seem to figure out this AVI thing.
It looks like Premiere 2018 just won't, at least as of April. It looks like, good Lord, it looks like they changed something in the last update that just stopped it from importing AVIs. So one people have been doing is using Handbrake to convert the APIs to another format and then importing that.
Okay, because I think if I imported to MP4, I'd be fine. Yeah. And, it's like these aren't high quality to the point where I would really care that much. I just need it to be a different.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I have a friend of mine
Handbrake. I had forgotten about Handbrake. Okay.
Yeah. And a buddy of mine whose business can afford any of the tools actually uses Handbrake for a lot of stuff. So the quality. Yeah. I mean.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We used Handbrake conversion to make web versions of Sword and Laser video that were shot super high quality and worked great.
Oh, perfect. All right, we'll see.
Well, hopefully,
thank you, everybody.
You know what? You could also give Media Encoder. I'm assuming you have Creative Cloud.
I do. Yeah.
Media Encoder should allow you to convert because that's kind of default for everything.
I hate Media Encoder. You mean Adobe's Media Encoder?
Yeah.
Just last night I was helping somebody. I had worked with it a lot in the bad old days, and it just tended to be miserable. And I started using it again last year, and it's just miserable in different ways. It's a perfectly reasonable tool to use to create exports from Premiere. I just still hate it with the more I use it, the less I like it. It's slow,
I mean, part of it is understanding the whole workflows. Media Encoder's there just to encode things into a video format.
Is there an advantage to using Media Encoder over Handbrake, Roger?
If you want to do a stack of them, like a bunch of clips, you just set everything and you let it run.
You can do that with Handbrake.
And what I find is I just find it just better integrates with all the Adobe apps. So whatever. Even like if I export from Adobe After Effects, you have to kick it to Media Encoder for it to.
Yeah, you basically have to. As far as I know, you have
on
to
the way
use
out.
Media Encoder to export from Premiere. It's just for anything
you don't
other
need
than
to
that.
From Premiere, you can export directly out of Premiere, but you can't do what would most people do is send it to Media Encoder and continue editing on another project while it runs in the background.
Yeah. See, I'm so used to QuickTime. I'm like, there's got to be some conversion thing in here. And I'm like, I can't, not with AVIs.
I mean, Handbrake is problem I have with Handbrake is it was always, yeah. I mean, part of it is like I've always converted things into intra codec format, which is basically much easier for editing. Like, anything that's used for delivery MP4s or whatever.
I'm just thinking of
VLC probably has a converting option, doesn't it?
What does
VLC?
Yep. Yes.
Oh,
it's a little non-intuitive though. That's my own.
That's okay. I like VLC.
VLC is awesome. I just like Handbrake because it's just easier for me to load a file into Handbrake and export it.
Yeah, Handbrake's pretty dead easy, and you can do the batch stuff.
Because and VLC. I mean, I use VLC all the time. Like people, this video file won't open. Download VLC.
Yeah, exactly. I had that same thing the other day where I had somebody that was just less sort of like, I don't understand file whatever format, was like, everything's ruined. I'm like, try to open it in VLC, and she was like, it worked.
It's funny how that
every time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whenever I've locked myself out of my house, I just point VLC at it and it opens. It opens everything.
When I need a hamburger, VLC. Can you do that for me? Open source program? Thank you.
It's weird. Like every revision they do to Premiere sucks in a way because they move a bunch of tools where they used to be. And you're like, I can't find anyone. You get upset like I do. And I also don't like there's some issues I have with their kind of user-friendly, like, let's start with a new project. It's like, doesn't help. But
I've got it open right now and I look at it and I'm like, I want to die. But these are the sorts of things where after a week of using any of these programs, you're just like, oh yeah, I don't even notice all that stuff that bothered me anymore. Once you get your shortcuts going, it's just different colors and it's all the same.
It's cool. I mean, the biggest thing with Premiere, why it's so awesome, is it literally integrates with Photoshop, After Effects.
Yeah.
So like if I do a title animation, and as you know, once you kick over to Adobe After Effects, the interface is totally different. Not totally different, but it's different enough that it's not a one-for-one. But you can do your animation, and you can literally have a dynamic link of it into your timeline. And so if you don't like it later on, you can still adjust it. So you're always bouncing between applications. The only thing is you want to be careful because sometimes it's not the most stable thing and you want to save often. But it does that too. You can actually have it auto-save like every 10 seconds.
Auto-save.
AT&T just did something good. And I know that's going to be hard for you to swallow, Len. I apologize.
Drought-tolerant plants.
But they are rebranding Time Warner as Warner Media. So no more. And the reason I say that's good is no more of the like Time Warner, but not that Time Warner.
Right.
It's Warner Media. Makes perfect sense.
But not that Warner Media. No.
No, there's just the one.
Probably.
Man, $84.5 billion.
Yep, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of cheddar.
I could use like a quarter of that. Just buy me out too.
With cheeseburger with cheddar.
Seriously, throw me $2 million. I'll never bug you again.
Oh, this is interesting. Cops in Kansas stopped someone and found meth in their car, but to get consent to search the car, they used Google Translate because the driver only spoke Spanish. And the judge is like, that's not consent.
Wow.
Google Translate.
Interesting.
Google Translate is not reliable enough to have a clear expression of consent.
Good.
That's a really interesting case.
Yeah.
Because
that's interesting.
I think Google would probably argue, no, that's pretty reliable.
Well, and the law requires that officers make it clear that you have the right to refuse consent. And that's where the judge was like, it's not clear that this translation would make that clear. So
the next time this happens to me, I'm just like, I don't speak English.
Just don't say that.
Then,
for example,
we're good. Can't search the car.
The officer asked, "Puedo buscar el auto," which means, "Can I find the car?" Not, "Can I search the car?"
And the guy was like, "Yeah, you're looking at it."
He's like, "Yes, you totally can, because it's right in front of you, man."
Yeah, I don't know. Can you?
May I? Yeah, you have to say may I.
Right.
Mother, may I?
This is starting to turn into a bad night at the Jersey Shore.
No kidding.
Can I get in your car, son? I'm sorry, officer. Do you mean may you look in the car?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're able to look at the car.
Yeah, it really depends on the.
Because I'm sure the officer would be very cooperative after you said that. Too.
No. Although my personal favorite one was the cop that was trying to look in the back of had a Isuzu with the big back windows, and he was trying to be subtle with a mag light that was like this big, and talking to me. But I was like, "Would you like to inspect the rear of the vehicle for I don't know,
whatever?"
Yeah, and he was just like, "No, I wasn't looking in there." Like, dude, you're sweeping the trunk and looking side-eyed through it. I mean. Yeah, you want to look in the trunk. Look in the trunk, dude.
I was scarring. I was
literally reading this thing from why did I call you? Patrick.
Patrick, thank you. Speaking of Freudian.
No. Like it was a defense attorney or something for for criminal cases, but you had high profile clients. Doesn't matter. Never say anything to the police. Always take your right to remain quiet. Don't say anything.
Yeah,
this is big thing. Doesn't matter. Even if you're jovial or you're good, just don't say anything. Because once you start talking, when they pull you over, they can use it.
Doesn't make for a very good podcast, though.
I like to read Emily Dickinson when I've been pulled over.
Again, I'm sure that makes the officer very cooperative.
You could actually do a podcast of Patrick's time with law enforcement on the Jersey Shore.
We're going to ask Patrick about that for the patrons. For the video folks, thanks for watching.
Monday.
We'll see you guys Monday.
Have a wonderful